Welcome back to my channel. I'm Karina Roberts, and you are listening to my podcast, Radical is Relative. This is episode 3, Biden 2021. What's next? I'm joined here with my guest, Juwan Harris. There's so much for us to unpack, so just stay with us. Over the last 4 years, Donald Trump has given folks permission to be racist, sexist, xenophobic, and homophobic. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the hatred that Donald Trump has emboldened and amplified is not simply going to disappear just because Joe Biden is president. And I think I speak for a lot of liberals when I say when you watched Biden win the nomination, I felt relief.
Right.
It was not so much about excitement because this wasn't really an exciting election, was it?
No.
It was essentially Americans sitting down in their homes and deciding, policies aside, whether or not it was acceptable in their opinion for the highest man in office to be overtly racist. Make no mistake about it, racism was on the ballot.
Yes.
And so when we talk about Biden winning, we are acknowledging that 110%, this was a step in the right direction.
Right.
But there's also the glaring fact that 74 million Americans voted for Donald Trump in this election. 74 million Americans voted for hate.
Right.
Therefore, this is necessary change, but it also feels incremental.
Absolutely. I think it's really amazing to acknowledge that Joe Biden got the most votes in the history of our country. I think it's really important, to say that people came out in droves and voted. But it is just as alarming that people came out and voted for Trump more than they did 4 years ago.
Yes.
That means that the 4 years of lies, the 4 years of hatred, of all of the things that he's been doing was not a deal breaker for them.
Yes.
That they still were going to support this man and whatever he's been saying. I think that's extremely alarming, It's important to be able to have that breath of fresh air. I feel like I sleep a little bit better at night, knowing that
me too.
At least these next 4 years, there could be some crumb of hope for something, But I think it's important that we need to start the work now.
Biden is faced with the task of reconciling a divided country. When Biden gave his election speech on November 7th, he proclaimed that, quote, "This is the time to heal America," unquote. A lot of people who voted for him are clinging to that hope. While this is a great goal, how realistic is it? Firstly, there is a large population of Americans that do not believe, much less accept the fact that Joe Biden is president-elect. A political poll taken a few days after the election found that 70% of Republicans do not believe that this was a fair election. Wow. And what contributes to this social distrust is the fact that GOP senators are unwilling to congratulate Joe Biden, are unwilling to tell Donald Trump to concede.
Right.
Secondly, we are living in a time where building a wall to block out Mexico, calling Mexicans rapists and criminals.
Right, illegals, aliens.
Yes, calling Puerto Rico shithole countries, trying to institute a Muslim ban, calling white supremacist groups very fine people.
Not denouncing white supremacy on national television.
Yes. Telling the white supremacist group, the Proud Boys, to stand back and stand by are all considered presidential behavior and rhetoric.
Right.
So it's not as if Joe Biden has some magic wand and can heal these type of divisions. In order for the country to even begin healing, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, why are there so many Americans that Trump's rhetoric resonates with?
Right.
Why are there so many GOP senators that are willing to sit back and watch their party be completely reshaped and corrupted by one man?
Right.
Why? And in order to even begin healing, we have to ask ourselves these tough questions, and that's where we start.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say I'm mostly curious about what he means by healing,
Right.
I think healing encompasses so much. And so I'm curious how people were so comfortable and are so comfortable with letting the rhetoric of Trump be, let it sitting back, as you stated, sitting back. They're not saying anything, they're not either, they're supporting it with their silence. And I think that speaks volumes. It seems like our country has been so divided, and I think it only took 4 years of Trump's presidency to really, really, really do that, So how realistic is it to mend this gap? Because really, fear-mongering is what Trump used, is what his rhetoric has always been about. And that, for some reason, resonates with so many people. And that's so alarming. So how do you begin to mend that? And how realistic is that over at least just the next 4 years? It really starts with the mirror. You're right. But people have to want to look in the mirror. That's why I'm like, how realistic is it? Because they have to want to look in the mirror and see the reflection of what they're spewing to the world. And so that's, I agree. We'll see how realistic is it. We will see.
Let's dive into the second question. Many of Biden's supporters, who are hopeful that he will bring Democrats and Republicans together, may view Biden's win as a return to normalcy, signaling that they no longer need to care about politics. But how can we promote the idea that it's okay to feel relieved that Biden defeated Trump while also acknowledging that he is not exempt from criticism?
Right, absolutely. I really want us to talk about what this idea of normalcy even was. I think this year has been very revealing for a lot of people, with the pandemic, with working from home, with the election, with the protesting. All of it has been very revealing about our culture and kind of, what we value now.
Yes.
And so I think it's really important that I think it's naive. We shouldn't strive for a normalcy. We should strive to be what we want to be now after everything that we've been through. I think it's an excuse to want to go back to something. We should figure out what we want to be now, what kind of Americans we want to be now, what we want for our children, for the future generations of our world. Not to always claim that America was good in the past, because really it really wasn't.
Biden's win may result in a lot of white moderates no longer choosing to engage in tough conversations about race, privilege, and power. The momentum of activism that was sparked by George Floyd's death has subsided.
Those black squares.
Yes, and people have gone back to their daily lives.
A lot of the conversations that people have had this year about race, class, and privilege have been very helpful for a lot of different
people. And productive.
And productive. And so I think it's important. We should continue down that. We shouldn't be
yes,
okay, how do we go back to normal again?
Just because Instagram in your feed isn't talking about what you consider politics, but is actually human rights, it does not mean that we shouldn't be. And Biden winning, it may feel like that return to normalcy that you want, but in fact, all of those people that voted for Trump are still here.
Yes.
And if we could just get as fired up as they do for our desires as the Democratic Party, then we would be stronger.
Yeah.
We would have won by even a bigger margin.
Right. We should not just be okay, now we got this Democrat in office and everything might be okay again, because we know it's not. We really need to continue to put pressure on these politicians, to put pressure on the people in our government to actually be for the people. That's what the whole democracy is supposed to be, is for the people. It's for us.
There's been a lot of discussion about the division between Republican and Democratic parties, but few have discussed the radical shift that the Republican Party has undergone. For decades, the Republican Party used to stand for conservatism, small government, being fiscally responsible, but in 4 short years, Republican senators have stood by and watched Trump make their party the party of anti-immigration, white nationalism, and lawlessness. There are those Republicans who wholeheartedly embrace Trump, but there are also those who feel he's gone too far and would prefer a much less extreme candidate. So how are Republican senators going to bring their party together? They are trying to appeal to a wide variety of different kinds of voters. Firstly, there's the evangelical vote that will always vote for Republicans if they say that they are anti-abortion. Then there are those traditional conservative voters that stand for all those things I previously stated, who want that small government, who don't want to be taxed. And then there are the Trumpies, the ones that completely like the way that he conducts his politics. And there are the first-time Republicans who are not voting for Donald Trump because they do not like how he's reshaping the party, or are voting but not liking the person that they are voting for. So how are Republicans going to identify themselves? Do you think that they are going to continue with Trumpism being their way of conducting politics?
I think the easy answer is yes, they will continue to do that. I mean, the recent example is the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett.
Yes.
They push this agenda of getting her into the Supreme Court, and they did just that. And this nomination really only justifies that. They still were okay, we're going to vote for our party. Republicans still voted her in.
And all of these senators, majority of them are standing by Trump. And then there are the very few GOP senators like Mitt Romney who are willing to openly denounce Trump and say this is not representative of the Republican Party. The last question is, Juwan, what are you hoping Joe Biden will accomplish right away when he takes office? And what are you hoping he will accomplish in his entire 4-year term?
Well, I come from a healthcare background, and I'm a really big advocate about public health. And so for me, it's tackling COVID.
Yes.
That's the most immediate thing that has to happen. And I think, we need some sort of mandate, federal mandate, but also some sort of relief.
Yes.
We need we've been surviving off of $1,200 for how many months now? People have really been, struggling to find where they're going to get their next meal. We need to get our rents covered. We need to get our health, we need to get something, because people aren't going to be able to, we're not going to be able to be convinced that we can actually tackle this COVID, and shut down for 2 weeks and get everything ready to go, unless our government is helping us, because our government, again, is for the people, by the people. We need help from our government. That's really the most immediate thing, I think. And then I would say over the next 4 years, I'm hoping that Biden does something with our healthcare.
Making it more affordable,
more
accessible.
affordable. Exactly. Something needs to happen. I mean, it's really shocking, and it's really kind of embarrassing that other countries around the world have adopted other ways of either free healthcare or universal healthcare, and we haven't. It's not necessarily something that is this dystopian, idea that we're reaching for. Like, other countries are doing it, and so we need to do something at least to make it more affordable, more accessible. I hope that happens over the next 4 years, and I do hope that something with Biden's tax plan,
Yes.
Biden's tax plan. I mean, we need
redistribute the wealth. We will be so relieved to be on the national stage, looking a little bit more poised.
Yes, a little bit more.
That's good. Well, I think that we have reached the end of this episode on Radical is Relative.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, Juwan, for being here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you in the next video.
Yes.
Bye. I want to begin today's podcast. What am I saying? Okay. So I say fine. Yeah.
Excuse me.
What are you hoping Joe Biden will accomplish right away?